Every day, global commerce operates as a massive, continuous collision. Thousands of entities, large and small, are expanding, contracting, and aggressively fighting over the exact same finite pool of consumers. We call this rivalry competition. It is the condition that exists when multiple independent businesses aim to capture the attention and capital of identical target demographics. The immediate drivers behind this conflict are strict mathematics. Firms must relentlessly pursue increased raw sales to capture a larger percentage of total market share, which in turn secures their baseline profitability. To secure that capital, companies are forced into aggressive tactical maneuvers. They continuously slash prices, flood the market with rapid product launches, and iterate at breakneck speeds just to maintain their current standing. Beyond price caps, they also deploy massive capital expenditures towards high-end brand advertising, attempting to buy territory directly in the consumer's mind. But while this environment often appears chaotic from the outside, it is highly predictable. This environment is a rigid, structural system governed by distinct, mappable market architectures and measurable vector forces. Long-term business survival rarely comes down to marketing luck. It relies entirely on a company's ability to calculate its geometric positioning against these specific external pressures. To map these forces, we first measure the axes of engagement. The most obvious is direct competition. This occurs when rival firms sell functionally identical products to the exact same customer base, like two major soft drink manufacturers fighting for shelf space. But threats also emerge indirectly. Indirect competition happens when entirely different products fight to satisfy the same core human desire. A cinema and a streaming app offer entirely different formats, yet they compete fiercely for the exact same leisure hours. Once the rivals are identified, the tactics form the next axis. Price competition dominates markets where firms use high-efficiency, low-margin operational models to attract purely budget-conscious consumers. Conversely, firms engaging in non-price competition deliberately avoid margin-destroying price wars. Instead, they attempt to win the market entirely on superior quality, rapid innovation, and exceptional customer service. Successful non-price competition results in a protective moat. By building premium branding and a closed technological ecosystem, a company can effectively lock consumers in, making them willingly ignore cheaper alternatives from competitors. Recognizing whether an industry naturally leans toward intense price wars or qualitative non-price differentiation is the critical first step in strategic analysis. Correctly identifying who your true substitute threats are and choosing the exact axis on which you will fight them determines a firm's baseline vulnerability to failure. Beyond individual tactics, these battles take place within larger macro-environmental frameworks. We can map every industry along a sliding spectrum known as market structure, which is defined primarily by the sheer number of active firms. On the far left, we find perfect competition. In this state, countless small firms exist, all selling completely identical, undifferentiated products. Because consumers have infinite alternatives, these individual producers have zero pricing power. The global agricultural sector is the prime example. A metric ton of grain is a pure commodity. An individual farmer cannot demand a premium price if identical grain is available everywhere else. Moving towards the center, we reach monopolistic competition. Here, many firms still exist, but they sell slightly differentiated products. Restaurants and clothing brands live here, possessing slight pricing power due to their distinct flavors or styles. Pushing further right, the field narrows drastically into an oligopoly. In these markets, massive barriers to entry restrict the landscape to just a few dominant firms that control the vast majority of the market share. Heavy manufacturing, telecommunications, and aerospace industries operate as oligopolies. The immense capital and physical scale required just to assemble the initial infrastructure physically prevents new competitors from easily entering. Finally, on the extreme right, the spectrum terminates at a monopoly. This occurs when a single entity achieves absolute dominance, faces zero direct competition, and unilaterally dictates market terms. True modern monopolies are often found in infrastructure and utility providers. The prohibitive cost and physical impossibility of duplicating massive power grids or regional water pipelines naturally result in single-entity control. A firm's inherent location on this structural spectrum acts as a strict ceiling, capping its maximum possible pricing power, regardless of how clever its marketing might be. To measure exactly how hostile or attractive any of these market positions are, Analysts rely on Michael Porter's five forces model. It identifies the specific directional pressures compressing an industry's profit margins. The first vector is industry rivalry. This is the baseline internal friction and warfare occurring daily between existing competitors. The more crowded the field, the stronger this internal grinding becomes. The second vector is the threat of new entrants. If an industry has low structural barriers, it acts as an open invitation for fresh, agile businesses to flood in and steal existing market share. The third pressure is the threat of substitutes. This vector strengthens when entirely new technologies or alternative formats emerge from outside the industry to satisfy the exact same consumer need. Legacy entertainment venues physically felt this pressure as the traditional cinema experience found its audience eroding, captured by the sudden rise of highly convenient, on-demand digital streaming platforms. Fourth is the bargaining power of buyers. When consumers can easily compare prices and switch brands without facing any financial penalty, they force companies to continually lower their prices to retain them. Finally, the fifth vector is the bargaining power of suppliers. If an industry relies on highly specialized raw materials controlled by only a handful of sources, those suppliers gain the leverage to aggressively raise input costs. Modern technology companies rely heavily on highly concentrated semiconductor manufacturers. Because there are so few foundries capable of producing advanced silicon wafers, these critical bottleneck suppliers hold immense power to dictate terms to massive global brands. Ultimately, an industry's total profit potential is inversely proportional to the combined, crushing weight of these five vectors. To survive the compression of those five forces, a firm cannot simply react. It must deliberately engineer a structural shield, a concept formally known as a competitive advantage. There are three strict geometric postures a firm can adopt. The first is cost leadership. This is the ruthless, operational pursuit of becoming the absolute lowest cost producer within the entire industry. By achieving immense scale and squeezing maximum efficiency out of supply chains, mega retailers wield this low-cost base as an offensive weapon, systematically undercutting rivals who cannot match their margins. The second posture is differentiation. Here, a firm effectively steps out of the price war entirely by engineering products that the market perceives as highly unique, superior, or culturally essential. The third posture is the focus strategy. Rather than attempting to serve the entire population, a firm zeroes in on a highly specific niche demographic and aggressively tailors its operations to dominate that single segment. Companies must commit to a lane. Attempting to blend these strategies almost always results in a firm being stuck in the middle, lacking the massive scale required for cost leadership, while failing to offer the uniqueness necessary for genuine differentiation. A competitive advantage is not a marketing tagline. It is a mandatory structural shield that deflects industry pressure and ensures a company does not get crushed by the forces surrounding it. Today, the internet acts as a hyper-accelerant for all five of Porter's forces simultaneously, exponentially increasing the sheer speed and intensity of global rivalry. Digital commerce completely dissolves traditional geographic barriers to entry. Small enterprises can now instantly leverage e-commerce platforms to access global markets and directly threaten massive legacy incumbents. Early digital retail pioneers mapped this shift, realizing they could weaponize the internet to bypass the crippling physical infrastructure costs historically restricting retail expansion. Simultaneously, online marketplaces significantly increase buyer bargaining power. By making global price comparison instantaneous and effortless, power shifts directly from the producer to the consumer. But hyper-competition carries deep systemic drawbacks. While it forces rapid innovation and delivers lower consumer prices, it triggers brutal, zero-sum price wars, crushes baseline profit margins, and drives widespread worker burnout. To survive these speeds, corporate response mechanisms are no longer optional. Firms must implement continuous operational benchmarking, execute rapid technological iterations, and forge heavy defensive alliances. Companies that fail to adapt their structural positioning to match these digital velocities will be swiftly outmaneuvered and eradicated from the global market. In an accelerating global economy, treating competition as a chaotic battlefield guarantees failure. Understanding and mastering the invisible architecture of market forces is the absolute prerequisite for long-term survival.